Assalamu alaikum listeners, welcome, good evening. You're listening to Friday Night Prime with me, Amir Suleiman, on Salam Radio 106.2 FM and of course Inspire FM on 105.1 in Luton. Welcome to you all. The last show I'll be doing before the Ramadan break. So some of you might be pleased about that. I hope not. Some of you should be sad. I hope that's the case. Listen, we're Facebook Live, we're YouTube Live, we're online at salamradio.co.uk and of course via our iPhone and Android apps. We're always on air for you 24/7 365, uniting all communities. Please make sure you follow us on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram, and please do make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel. Now, we've got two very great stories for you this week. As I said, the last show until after Ramadan. And in a few minutes, the first of those stories, we're going to be talking to Coco Fowler. And a man on a mission is an understatement. For the last year, he's been helping to divert tons, 120 tons actually, of potential food waste from landfill to those in need in Peterborough with his company For Nought, which is a great name and it's a great initiative. So that's coming up in a few minutes, and then at 9:30 at the halfway point we're going to be joined by Christina Longden with a fascinating story that simply must be heard. Robert Reschid Stanley was a Victorian Muslim and a great friend of Abdullah Quilliam, who we all know, and his reversion was kept secret for over a century. Yet his own great-great-great-grandson also reverted in 1991, knowing nothing of this secret history. Christina will be talking to us about how this history was uncovered, what the family has learned, and how the story is being used for good. Absolutely fascinating stuff and a lot more to this story, so please do make sure you stay tuned. We're going to be back with Coco to talk about this wonderful initiative straight after this.
Is out and it's begun. The month of Ramadan has come. It fills my heart with so much light. We pray for you all day and night. The days of mercy I'll go through. I'll be reaching out to you. Allah forgive me and everyone for all the sins that I have done. I'll give it all up just for you. I hope and pray we'll see it through. Just fill my heart with love for you and the beloved. There ain't no better time of year. My heart's so happy all because it's Ramadan. Ramadan. Tell your family and your friends it's the time to make amends. It's Ramadan. Ramadan. Oh, 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 oh. Start for you and I to turn a new leaf and live our lives all in your obedience. We ask for your forgiveness. This is the month of the Quran, spreading peace to live as one. Marhaban Shahr Siyam, beloved month of Ramadan. I'll give it all up just for you. I hope and pray we'll see it through. Just fill my heart with love, Allah. I'll give it all up just for you. I hope and pray we'll see it through. Just fill my heart with love for you and the beloved. Oh, ain't no better time of year. My heart's so happy all because it's Ramadan. Ramadan. Tell your family and your friends it's the time to make amends. It's Ramadan. Ramadan. صلي وسلم ويبارك عليه آمين وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم.
Those eager listeners amongst you might remember that I played this track last week. Playing it again this week because, of course, Ramadan is just around the corner, the last Friday before the blessed month of Ramadan. I hope you're all suitably prepared for the blessed month and a very spiritual month for us all. So we're all very excited about this. As I said to you before at the beginning of the show, we have got a very exciting guest for you now. This is Coco Fowler, who has, quite frankly, got an amazing story to tell, which is all about this company of his, For Nought. And essentially, we're going to talk to Coco about how it all began, because it is truly fascinating, and how, what his plans are and what the growth is looking like for this. First of all, let's bring Coco on air. Good evening, Coco.
Good evening.
Thanks for coming on.
It's a pleasure.
Well, it's really good to have you in the studio. I read your story in the Peterborough Telegraph, and there was a press release that went out, and I just thought, we've got to get you on, because it's a great story to tell, and I think the initiative is amazing. For those that don't know about it, if they've been living under a rock in Peterborough, I think it's a great time to tell it. So it's a great initiative, but how did it all begin, Coco? Where did this concept start from?
I think everything starts, it started in my own head, and I was in need. I found that I'd been diagnosed with osteoarthritis and was unable to work. Right. And so needed some help from wherever you get help, to make ends meet. Bills were getting on top of me, and was suffering from a few other illnesses, mental illnesses. I don't mind saying so. Sure. And whilst I was helping or getting help from a couple of charities in Peterborough, they asked me if I would mind helping pick up some food from one of the supermarkets. Okay. And I found out that there was some excess bread that needed to be picked up on a Thursday night, Yeah. And then another volunteer was unable to do there, so it turned into 2 and then 3 pickups, and then I had to get a little trailer, and so we were doing quite a lot of pickups to feed people at this one location.
So did that escalated quite quickly over what period of time till you needed a trailer?
Well, I think we really needed it at the beginning. We needed a van at the beginning. It's just we had many volunteers at one point that were delivering from different areas. Right. And when we got consolidated, it was more a case of finding that we were picking up from 1 or 2 locations but on one day. And then realising that obviously there's another 6 days in the week, and we weren't doing anything with that food.
Oh, I see.
And so that's sort of where the idea came. And I thought, well, hang on a second, how can we use the other days and possibly other supermarkets and other venues? And so that was the idea. So I asked for help, and very fortunately somebody in the local community, another organisation, provided the money to buy a van.
Fantastic.
It was very fortunate because the car gave up the ghost the week before we got the van.
Oh, wow, really?
So it was
the timing was perfect.
It was perfect.
Wow. And so you mentioned supermarkets. So is that where the food comes from? Is it only supermarkets?
No.
Okay.
I mean, it started with the supermarkets, and I think everybody knows over the last couple of years that the supermarkets seem to have an excess of food, and it's generally just there's an excess of bread at the end of the day each day, and also some fruit and veg. And we all know about the wonderful work that the food banks are doing, and they use dry goods. So there's tins and pasta for them, but this was more the fresh foods that would go out of date the next day, if you like. Yeah. And then I was given a contact with Riverford Farms, the organic farm, and they told me that they provide their food to their customers, but sometimes it's not got as long a shelf life, so maybe there's only 2 or 3 days left on it, but it's still very good food. So they have quite a lot as well, so it was like gathering that and then delivering it.
Oh, I see. That's interesting. Yeah, I volunteer at a food bank, and it is kind of long shelf life goods, which is great. And we do get people coming in, though, asking, do we have this, do we have that, with a shorter shelf life? And obviously the food banks don't provide that. So this is... well, I suppose in a way it's a complimentary service, isn't it, on top of the food bank?
I think if you say that the food banks do dry goods and we do fresh food, and my understanding of contact with the food banks is they don't have the storage for fresh food, which is fine. There's another initiative that I work with now, which is run by PECT, which is the community fridges, which is growing in scale, which again gives us more time on the shelf because they're in the fridges. And so that's a great thing, but also now Food for Nought are doing cookery courses. And that's teaching people how to maybe preserve their food, you know, and make all of this stuff last a lot longer.
Right.
Whether it's a lot of things I learn from it as well, from the courses, you know, what's freezable, what's not.
Right.
If you pre-prep, make soups or something, how much longer you can keep them, you know. And so
practical tips and advice.
Yeah, very much so. And learning dietary things as well, which is very important. I mean, I personally just been diagnosed with diabetes type 2, luckily, and it's just managing your own diet. But if I can help other people with that, with the fresh food and stuff, then it's a great thing. And the plan, obviously, to go forward is to open up a shop come centre, and then hopefully get more volunteers, a bit of funding, local funding and sponsorship, and we'll be able to divert more food from landfill and get it out to more people in the community, which
is a fantastic thing. And so where does your food go? You've mentioned community fridges run by PECT. I'm not sure how many of them they have now. Do you know off your head?
Well, there's I think PECT have got 3 running at the moment, but we're also got some that have been taken on by the individual places. So we have one in West Raven Community Centre at the moment. There's also one in the Harris Street Church, which is in the centre next door. So that's all open to all faiths 3 days a week, Wednesday to Friday.
Brilliant.
The food is delivered as well at the moment to the City College, to Food Cycle, who do meals for anybody in need on a Monday. The Yaxley Community Centre has got one of the fridges, and then after that there's just, I mean, at the moment some of the food goes and stays on at my home that's delivered at the end of the week, but that we want to get into a centre.
That's interesting. So you don't, I mean, people might have had the impression that the food goes from you directly to the homeless on the street, but that's not the case, is it?
No.
It has to go, obviously, where places that the homeless know they can go to, for example.
Exactly.
I know it's not just for the homeless.
It's it's definitely got to be called for people in need, because the ones that go to, say, Monday, Wednesday and Friday at the moment, there are meals that are cooked with this food for people in need and the homeless. But the other days when we deliver to the fridges, this food is open to anybody in the community. So that literally we're trying to get one in every borough of Peterborough, so that you know, people would be able to use it. A central hub would be ideal, and that's what we're really trying to get funds for and support for. And that would allow us then to work along the lines of membership like the food bank uses, but the food bank uses the DWP, the Citizens Advice and Cross Keys and a few others. We want to include churches, mosques, temples, community centres, doctors. As I said, the health thing is, if a doctor decides, sometimes he might say to somebody, look, your diet's not suitable at the moment, you need to up the amount of fruit and veg you're eating. We've got the food, so then they can recommend that they come to us, and we can give them the food.
Wow. So it's actually it's a really beneficial service, and we're not just talking about food aspect, but from an advice perspective as well. It's really, really beneficial to everyone in the community.
100%. And that's the thing. And unfortunately, in this day and age, we find that people have either lost their jobs or even people that are working normally. Sometimes it's a stretch to get the type of food that we're talking about. We all know we can make ends meet, but just go that little bit extra. You know, we get so much fresh fruit and veg that it would be a waste for it to go to landfill, you know.
Wow. That's amazing. Now, you've been doing this for about a year. So is it a year, or is it a bit longer than a year?
It's just over a year now.
Over a year. And you mentioned to me off air that it's 120 tonnes that have been diverted?
Yeah, we've moved. I mean, the press release came, it was 100. We were just on about 9 months then. It's just gone on. So it's about 120 tonnes we've diverted so far.
Amazing. And how's the progression been in that year? I mean, you mentioned, first it was a car and a trailer, but in terms of people getting to know that you exist, how's that been in that 12 months?
Right. I mean, very recently, PS Media came out with our press release, and we've been on TV since, and radio since, and that's increased our footprint. But also the community fridges, people are starting to know that they're there, and other places are getting in touch and asking if we can help advise them even on getting their own fridge, you know, and how does it work, you know. And I say the cookery course, but the idea with the cookery courses was to do it, started in a community centre, and then after about 7-8 months, let the local community run their own sessions, and then move on to the next community and help to set their one up, you know what I mean, and or give advice, because like the actually community centre have seen what we're doing and said, well, could you come along and advise us on, you know, how your progression was and what you did, pitfalls as well, you know.
Of course, So what's the, you know, you've talked about cookery courses, which is a recent addition to the service, you could say. But what's the kind of longer term vision? What do you see for Food for Nought?
Well, the long term vision is obviously, I still believe there's more food out there. And we're only working with a couple of supermarkets and one farm at the moment. Potentially we could work with more farms, more supermarkets, have more volunteers delivering the food for us. But we would need a central base to do that, you know, an old disused shop or an old disused pub or something like that would be ideal. And that's what we're fundraising for now, to get some premises. But also then that will be, I spoke with you earlier and we mentioned Children of Adam. And it would be good to get other people and other organisations involved in volunteering for us and helping us. But again, we need that central place first, and then another van, a second van, more shops on board, more farms, and more cookery courses. And I think one other thing, as I said, with the cookery courses, teaching people, and I've learnt an awful lot. What I'd like to do as well is to use a lot of the excess food that isn't even used by us to then make soups or parboil things and freeze it, so that we can actually give people ready-made meals, but they'll be very healthy ready-made meals, you know,
made with fresh ingredients.
Exactly.
Fantastic. No, that's really good. So I understand, I mean, obviously you can't really grow without the support that you need to grow. So you're talking premises, you're talking volunteers, you know, additional vehicles, etc. Have you got a kind of timeline in mind when that, I know ASAP, right? But
this is the thing. I had a meeting the other day with the trustees, and they were the same. You know, I'm sort of straight like a bull. I'm straight ahead. I only look in one direction and I go for it. But I mean, realistically, if we can get the funding together and do everything, I would like to see the centre or stroke shop up and running for the beginning of or the end of the year. So December come January, I would really like it all to be in place. And a second van and other volunteers. It all sort of is a catch-22. Without the centre, I can't get the extra volunteers or even approach the extra supermarkets. So it's sort of one of those. Although in the wings there are the supermarkets knocking on the door, going, "Can we help? Can we be involved
they're coming
now?"
To you.
Oh yeah, now.
Fantastic.
Because, and it's a great thing, you know, because it's there's no point in us beating about the bush. They have an excess of food, and we do have people in our community from all faiths that, you know, need this food.
No, absolutely. It really is a wonderful thing. Now, you're out there, you've seen it all, you know, firsthand. You've been in need yourself, so you know what it's like. But what's your perception of the situation, specifically around not just people in need, but Peterborough's homeless? I mean, what's your perception of that, and what do you think could be done and should be done to improve help for our homeless in Peterborough? Because it is a bit of a contentious issue, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a very difficult one. I mean, there are a lot of people out there that it's hard to say, isn't it? Look,
it is hard.
I mean, I think we all need to do a little bit more, and maybe if we all gave a little something, whether, I'm not only on about financial, maybe a prayer, maybe a thought, maybe, you know, maybe money, whatever else, but to help organisations like mine and all of the many good organisations out there, then we would all be able to do a little bit more.
Sure.
I keep coming into contact with people all the time. You know, a lady whose husband passed away unfortunately last year, and she keeps saying to me, "We've still got some money from this budget that we wanted to give to the homeless. We only spent half of it. How can we get rid of the rest of it?" You know, and until we come up with really good ideas, we don't want to use it. You know what I mean? It would be easy for me to say, "Well, I'll put it in my petrol tank and that'll keep me running around the town."
Right.
But that's not what we want to do.
I understand.
And I'd like, you know, the homeless thing. A lot of people, they don't choose to be on the street, but they find it difficult to get off of the street.
Right.
And for that reason, it might be easier if we provide more clothing, more bedding, you know, and more food as we're doing here. And that, I think, will do. I don't want to get into the political side of, I think our government should be doing more, I think our council should be doing more.
But they should.
They should, without a doubt.
Absolutely.
And I have had close ties over the last 12 months with our local council.
Okay.
And our local MP as well, the new one.
Yeah.
And to say that they have given me support, to say that they're behind me, and that does help when you're going around and asking business people, you know, to give you support.
Yeah.
But I think maybe, even then to turn around and say, can we open up a premises, a building? Is there use, you know, of something that the council runs?
Sure.
And obviously, all charities need a little bit of help in that way.
Absolutely.
And so, I think they could be doing a little bit more like that.
Yeah.
Money, they're always going to say there isn't any money, but
that's right.
I think if they sometimes as well, the figures, you know, they have to be a little bit more understanding and acceptable of the figures, because as we've said, it's not just the homeless. There's a lot of people in need out there.
Of course
there's school children going to school that haven't had a decent meal. Do you know what I mean? There's single parents. There's, you know, there's so many people. It's
so true. We have people that, you well know this, Coco, but we have people that come to the food bank, and it's a common story, who are, you know, working 2 jobs and still they can't afford to put food on the table.
Yeah. I mean, I had opportunity just to bump into 2 people during my work over the last couple of months. One of them was a lovely young lady who unfortunately had a breakup with her boyfriend,
right,
and he'd taken near enough all her savings. And so through no fault of her own, she'd gone into a hostel. She was trying as hard as she could to get back into work. I believe she has got work now, thank goodness.
That's good.
And but at the same time, she's using our service because he's taken all the money and she can't even feed herself.
Unbelievable.
You know, and that sort of thing is very, very difficult.
It is.
I do meet people, and through this as well, it's non-faith and multi-faith.
Yeah.
So the great thing about it for me is that I don't want people necessarily to tell me why they need it.
Sure.
Just to say, I need it. And that's very difficult sometimes.
I'm sure.
There's another idea as well with when we have the centre,
right,
when that's set up, that we can contact carers, doctors, community centres who know of elderly people in the community that need help, but also they're not going to be able to get to us. So then we're going to contact taxi companies and ask them if they can do a delivery to those places. You know, things like that, where people are not necessarily going to come out and say, "Oh, I'm homeless, I'm out of money, I need food."
Sure.
But somebody out there knows who does need it.
Absolutely.
And
so it sounds like you're covering all the angles. And
we're trying.
And you're certainly planning to get there. We're fast running out of time, Coco. Unfortunately, I could talk to you for hours. But I suppose that the real important question is, how can our listeners get involved and support you in this? I mean, is there a website, is there a Facebook page that you go to?
Food for Nought is on Facebook at the moment.
Okay.
There will be a website at some point shortly.
Okay. Sure.
And obviously, hopefully through you, through your radio, and through PS Media, Paul Stainton, anybody needs anything. We would like, I mean, it's the begging part, if you like. It's the money, it's the crunch, where I would say I really would like local businesses to get in touch and say if they can help us with in any way, you know, reduce price on the premises. Preferably within the town area, financially, gifts, help, anything, you know, any ideas that people come up. Can we do a fundraiser at somebody else's, you know, church or mosque or whatever?
Well, let me tell the listeners that if anyone is listening out there that can help, you've heard Coco's please, for necessary help that's needed, our number is 01733 602 133, or you can email info@salamradio.co.uk, or send us a message 07745 278 978 if you can help in any way to this frankly beautiful cause. It's wonderful to talk to you, Coco. Thank you so much for coming in. It's been a pleasure, and we all our listeners and everyone at Salam Radio wish you all the best with it. I'm sure we'll be in touch off air. Maybe Salam Radio could help in the future in terms of publicising, your fundraising initiatives and things like that. That would be, I think, something that our listeners would love to hear about. Thank you so much for coming in, and we wish you all the best. And keep us updated. Let us know how things progress for you. We'll be watching.
Will do. And thank you for letting us get it out there.
No, you're welcome. Thank you, Coco. That's great. So that was Coco Fowler, an amazing initiative. And please do stay tuned, and I'll give you those numbers again after the break. Coming up after the break, joining us by phone is, as I mentioned, Christina Longden. I shall tell you all about that fascinating story shortly in this show, which is going to be the last one until I'm back on the 22nd of June. Please stay tuned. A fascinating story coming up. Speak to you soon.
Stay tuned to Salam Radio after this short ad break.
Thinking about iftar? So are those who have nothing to break their fast with. Feed a fasting person at Masjid Al-Aqsa for just £6 a day, or give a family a whole month's supply of food for just £65 in a country of your choice. Make a difference to someone's life this Ramadan and earn multiple rewards from Allah. Now is the time to give. Visit humanappeal.org.uk or call 0161 225 0225.
Have you visited Amar Food Store yet? Now open at Lincoln Road Triangle, 613B Lincoln Road, Peterborough. Pay us a visit and take advantage of our special offers and great range of products on groceries, vegetables, fruits and halal meat. All your favourite brands under one roof. We take payment by card, have free customer parking and offer a free local delivery service. Also available, PayZone for bill payments and money transfer services to Pakistan. Amar Food Store and Halal Meat. Now open at Lincoln Road Triangle. Call us on 01733 68 73 74. High in quality, low in prices.
Need car parts quickly and at a great price? City Auto Parts offer competitive prices, trade accounts and a delivery service in and around Peterborough. For all your parts and accessories requirements, visit City Auto Parts, 30 Fitzwilliam Street, Peterborough, PE1 2RX. Call us on 01733 347711 or visit www.cityautoparts.co.uk.
Need a great place to chill out? Look no further than The Lounge for quality food and drinks at a great price. Try our varied menu: pasta, seafood, burgers, grills, salad, soup, rice and sides. Also hot and cold drinks, milkshakes and mocktails. Leave room for our exquisite desserts. The Lounge, 417 Lincoln Road, Peterborough. Call 01733 709 306 to order for delivery. The Lounge, friendly service with a great atmosphere.
Hate crime is a serious matter. Hate crime is a serious matter. It is important to report all incidents to give the best chance of prevention. If you're a victim or witness of any hate crime or incident, you can report it easily online at peterborough.gov.uk/hate crime. It only takes around 10 minutes and there's no waiting in line. You can choose whether to give your name or a further statement to the police. Please report any incident of hate, whether a victim or witness. As always, for emergencies, please dial 999. For non-emergency, please dial 101. Hate crime. Together, we can stop it.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ألم تر كيف فعل ربك بأصحاب الفيل ألم يجعل كيدهم في تضليل وأرسل عليهم طيرا أبابيل ترميهم بحجارة من سجيل فجعلهم كعصف مأكول.
Broadcasting 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. This is Salam Radio.
Assalamu alaikum, brothers and sisters. Welcome back to Friday Night Prime here on Salam Radio 106.2 FM and, of course, Inspire FM 105.1. I'm your host, Amr Suleiman. And, fascinating story just before the break there from Coco Fowler, all about that initiative, Food For Nought. Do check out the Facebook page to get all the info on this wonderful initiative and get involved and support this, frankly, superbly beautiful initiative. Now, as I told you at the top of the show, we've got a guest coming on in a moment, Christina Longden. Now, she's the great-great-great-granddaughter of Robert Reschid Stanley, who was a Victorian Muslim and a great friend of Abdullah Quilliam, and his reversion to Islam was kept secret for over a century. And yet his own great-great-great-grandson, Christina's brother Stephen, also reverted in 1991, knowing nothing of this secret history. It really is a fascinating story. Now, Christina Longden has worked in social housing and in policy, writing speeches for ministers and influencing government at various levels. She relocated to early post-apartheid Namibia, where she lived and worked with the Kalahari Bushmen, where she wrote 2 oral history books with them. And after having her first child in Southern Africa, Christina returned to the UK and became director of an international trade justice charity, the Lorna Young Foundation, based in Huddersfield, and is founder of the Not Juster programme, supporting disadvantaged people to become ethical entrepreneurs. She's also won the Huddersfield Literature Festival One Voice Monologue several years ago and has written 2 dark comedy books set in the north of England. And we're going to bring Christina on air now, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum, Christina.
Walaikum salam.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm very well, thanks. Thank you so much for joining us this Friday evening.
Oh, it's a pleasure.
No, it really is a deep thanks, because I know you had to get cover to look after your kids, and bless you for being here now. I mean, it's wonderful. I'm so pleased you could join us, because this really is a fascinating story to get out there, and I was so keen to get you on the show. Now, can you set the scene for us? I mean, it's fascinating, and kind of tell us about Robert Reschid Stanley and this amazing revelation that you uncovered of his reversion to Islam.
Yeah, it was. I mean, it's still a shock even now when I tell people about it. The coincidence or the synchronicity or whatever you want to call it. We always knew that we had a mayor in the family. The side of Manchester I'm from is East Manchester, and a town called Stay-the-Bridge, which is sort of just sandwiched between Ashton and the Oldham area.
Right.
And we always knew that he was a mayor back in the 19th century, and so we knew that, and we'd seen a picture of him in his mayoral robes. But beyond that, we didn't know anything else about him other than proud of the fact that he'd done well.
Yeah.
And then a few years ago, when my dad was made redundant, he kind of thought, well, what am I going to do in my spare time now? And he'd always wanted to do a bit more family history research. And he was put in touch with a very elderly relative who had kept a couple of artefacts. One of them was a copy of some very old magazines called The Crescent.
Yeah.
And there was this photograph of Robert Stanley in there, and he was the image of my dad, which makes it really interesting.
Okay.
But it said Robert Reschid Stanley, and so of course we thought, well, what's he doing with a name like Reschid? Where kind of Stanleys, and nobody's ever had a foreign-sounding name in the family before. So that was interesting. And then when we looked at, it said the record of Islam in the UK. And then the fact that my brother had reverted nearly 10 years before was such a shock. There was also a fez that actually belonged to Robert Reschid Stanley, which he wore in the first mosque in England, in Liverpool, alongside Abdullah Quilliam.
Yeah.
And a little tie pin with a star and crescent on it.
Wow.
And the cousin, the very elderly cousin, had no idea what these things were, never really had any interest in them. He just had them in the back of a cupboard, and it took a curious member of the family to be asking around other members of the family about did they have anything, for this conversation to begin and for my dad to start doing some digging.
Interesting. That is absolutely fascinating. And so when you first saw this this magazine, The Crescent, which would have been dated about when? I mean, how old was that publication?
That one was 1908, yeah. There were a few editions of it, but what was really fascinating about them was that the one edition in particular was exactly 10 years to the month after my great-great-great-granddad had reverted. And then if anybody knows anything about The Crescent, which is the earliest written record of Islam in the UK, which Sheikh Abdullah Quilliam produced himself, he wrote everything in it, he edited it all, it was his baby, and he interviewed my great-great-great-granddad for obvious reasons. I mean, this is, the other editions of the Crescent, there's not anything quite as remarkable as this. It's a very close personal story of a British guy talking about his civic achievements as much as his achievements on his path to Islam, really. So he obviously was of great importance to Quilliam, and I think it's only recently, really, for me in the last year, been looking at this, it struck me what fantastic friendship these guys must have had.
No,
for him
clearly.
to have such a place in his heart and the way he speaks about him. And my great-great-great-granddad was older than Quilliam, and I think, there was that real almost like fatherly affection between them, reading between the lines. He had great respect for him.
Yes.
And if you think about it, Robert Reschid came to Islam quite late on in his life, so that's a remarkable achievement. These days you don't tend to hear as much about people reverting in their elderly years.
No, that's true.
So he was self-educated, he studied he never went to school, he taught himself everything, and he was a phenomenal letter writer. He wrote letters to the Caliph, he went down to Parliament to represent his constituents there. He was incredibly well taught for a man, of the 19th century. He was really born into nothing, into poverty. So it's a fantastic story. And the more we sort of look into it, the more you think, what a personality.
No, indeed. And do you have any insight or any, I suppose evidence is the wrong word, but anything that makes you aware of what made him change his faith, or rather revert to Islam?
Yeah, I think the really interesting thing is, what we have to remember is it was a very, very, very different religious world then than it is now. And in particular, this part of the north of England that we're looking at, and other parts of England as well, but in particular during the Industrial Revolution, things were happening there that were just a real hotbed of politics and religion. There were a lot of religious sects that grew up here that were quite unusual. And he, from being quite young, was exposed to, I suppose, disillusionment with the mainstream Christian church, who had very much, in this part of Manchester, abandoned working class people and left them to their own fate, and were kind of really feathering their own nests. Yeah. And a lot of the nonconformist churches were doing better work, shall we say. But there were a lot of radical thinkers, and I think he had a much stronger connection with the Abrahamic faith, really. And I think that's what led him to feel, I don't really buy into the Christianity side of things anymore. Where can I look? And his business that he set up was a tea trader. And so I think that all his own incredibly sharp brain and his outlook on the world and his interest in religion kind of fell into the path, really, of people who were coming into the country, bringing different goods and trading. And there was a very much, as you know, in Liverpool, there was a very much sort of fluid movement of sailors who came in there, and a lot of them were practicing Islam. So he would have met a lot more people as he did his trade along the route of Manchester and Liverpool and beyond, than if he'd just stayed in his hometown of Stalybridge, where, they didn't tend to get people coming and going as much. So it was about mixing with other people and getting to know other people's different lifestyles and, just being curious, I think.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned that he was an excellent letter writer, and you said he wrote letters to the Caliph and Parliament, etc. So his, civic engagement was exceptional and to be looked up to, I would say. But do you know if he was as engaged pre-Islam, or did it develop further after he converted? I mean, do you know anything about that? I'm just curious.
Do you know what's really interesting about it is I would have thought it would be the other way around. So there would be more evidence that after he reverted, he was doing more campaigning and, more advocacy. But it was before. And it's actually this which led him on his path. He's actually writing these letters before he became a Muslim. And he's actually getting outraged by what was happening to Muslims in the Balkans, the issues that were happening in Afghanistan. He was really exceptionally well informed about what was happening, to the point that when he was the mayor of Stalybridge, which was 1875, everybody in the country was sort of being called, to public meetings to support the government's actions. And I think that he was the first mayor to say, I completely disagree with what the government are doing. And then I think 4 or 5 other mayors followed suit. And years later, when he had reverted, and then after his death, people sort of said in print he was right. He was right to stand up. We now see what was going on with the government and Russian agents involved and stuff that, is so similar to what's happening today. He really sort of stood up and thought for himself and challenged the government, and he wasn't anybody's sort of pet poodle, shall we say. He thought for himself, to the degree that he was booed off stage in Manchester once when he was sort of standing up for what was happening, the terrible things that were happening to Muslims, and the government was dressing it up as something else. So he really did think for himself, and that, I think, led to him befriending Quilliam. Rather than the other way around, rather than sort of somebody like Quilliam coming into his life and, everybody says, he would have been radicalised by Quilliam. No, actually, it wasn't at all. It was a meeting of minds.
Absolutely. I think that's probably what was the basis of their solid friendship, wasn't it? Was the... I suppose they probably admired each other to an extent, I would imagine. Based on
very different backgrounds. I think that's the bit that fascinates me, is people sort of say, well, why have we heard so much about Quilliam, but we don't know about the other people around him? Well, we do know about some of them, but the ones that we tend to know about are the ones from a much more middle-class background, whose family have preserved records. And if you're from a more working-class family background, as he was, even though he's the mayor of Stalybridge, he lived in a little humble terrace house in Stalybridge, which is still there. His family, after he died, completely covered it up, which is why we didn't know about it. There was this, something else that I'm looking into at the moment with writing this book, which is how horrified they must have felt. He died in 1911, and he would have been followed by British intelligence, as Quilliam was, who fled abroad, as you know, and so his life would have been under surveillance. His family would have been feeling very threatened. They would have felt that obviously allying with Turkey was not the thing to do, just as the World War I was about to break out. So I think that's very much why they covered it up. They perhaps they never really understood what it meant to him, or perhaps they were just terrified. It was a hard thing. If he was the only Muslim in town, it was very hard for his family, who clearly didn't, as far as we know, revert either.
Wow.
So it's a fascinating story, but again, the family didn't really have any investment in wanting to keep that story of him becoming a Muslim alive. But thankfully, somebody kept his faith.
No, exactly. No, fantastic.
Otherwise, we'd never have known.
Exactly. Now, you've written other books, as I said in the intro, and you have plans now to write, unsurprisingly, the book to this fascinating story. What makes this project and book so special and different from other initiatives, would you say?
I think it's probably the family involvement with it, and obviously, what happened with my brother was so unusual back in 1991, and again, it was not a religion that we had grown up with, that we were familiar with. My brother thought about things for himself. People have different influences that bring them on any path. And so having been on that journey with him and seeing the conflicts that have arisen both within the family and outside as a result of it, and just the echoing of 100 years ago, and my brother's personality, very, very similar, fighting injustice, speaking for himself, thinking and reading, and not having had the kind of advantages that a lot of people have in life with education. So it's strange how these things sort of, come down through, the different generations, even though you're not aware of them. But the fact that we've decided we're going to do this, and I think a lot of other wonderful, inspiring historical figures, haven't had a family that have been willing or able to do it. But I think because we've seen some of the struggles that Muslims have had in this country, and it's been so personal to us, you know, my nephews and my family, I think I feel, I'm speaking for myself, but I feel like an obligation to them and to my great-great-granddad as well, because his faith was hidden for so long.
Yes.
But I think I just want people to know that what a brave soul he was, and how hard it must have been for him.
Indeed.
And how hard it is for anybody that chooses a way of life or beliefs that are different to the ones that they were born into.
Absolutely. Now, you know, when this story is eventually published and the book is, you know, written and finished, what messages and lessons do you think can be learned from this story? How can it help bring about understanding and go some way to challenging the sad fact that Islamophobia is pretty rife in this country right now?
I just want people, I think people learn best when they're not being told what they should think.
Right.
And unfortunately, people think that the media, the mainstream media, is giving them permission to think for themselves, and it isn't. It's boxing people and it's controlling them. And I know I'm fortunate in that I kind of see through all that, you know, from my own experience and education and things in the world that I've seen as well. But I think a lot of people don't get that chance to get away from it and to meet somebody in a different setting, other than they're being told, well, you must all be friends, it's a nice thing to do, interfaith, everybody love each other, let's all be friends.
Right.
And people, if they're fearful and they're ignorant and they don't understand somebody else, their default will be to cover their ears.
Yeah.
So what we want to do is to bring a very human story about somebody that people can instantly relate to. And I'm talking about, you know, working class groups in particular who are more sort of prone to extremism and you know, that kind of fear of people taking our jobs and listening to this horrible bile that's being spouted.
Sure.
And about some kind of a war going on.
Yeah.
Just to get them back to what it means to be a human and to have choices and influences and a brain and to use them. And then to use that chance to explore what Islam is and what it isn't. And, you know, and just to get people to sit and talk to each other. And I think it's just such a great story, if, you know, for Muslims in this country, because the heritage goes back such a long way.
Yeah.
You know, and I think the problem is so many people think it's a new thing. And it just isn't.
No.
You know, it just isn't.
It really isn't. You're right. Now, you mentioned a very interesting point there about the types of kind of demographic that are susceptible, shall we say, to kind of the ignorance that is spewed out from all different types of sources. But those types of people, and I'm not generalising here, but it is slightly stereotypical, but they don't normally pick up a book and read. So what other plans are there to get this story out there other than those that want to read the book?
Well, we were really, I keep using the word lucky, aren't we? I don't really believe it, Mark. We were fortunate, oh no, it's another luck word. No, to know Conor Ibrahim, who
of course
is the fantastic filmmaker of Frasier, who lives not so far away in Bradford. It's not his fault he lives in Bradford, but, you know, somebody has to. Sorry, Bradford, we love you. But I'm from Huddersfield, so, you know, we have this rivalry thing going on.
Right.
But no, Conor is fantastic, and he'd actually heard of the story, and he met me through my husband.
Okay.
And he suddenly put two and two together. You're the person who, wow, you know.
Yeah.
And so he said, tell me about it. And I told him the story, and he went, I want to do a film for you. I want to do an introduction to this man's life to get people interested, so then they will get ready for the book with all the information behind it.
Yes.
And I didn't even think of that, because my idea was, I do a lot of work with people who are not comfortable with reading and people who are not comfortable with maybe something academically written.
Right.
And I feel really strongly that if you've got such a fantastic person and a message, it should be accessible to people.
Indeed.
So, while, you know, there's an option of doing something academic on it, my first thing that I want to do, and I know that my dad and my brother and the rest of my family just want people to hear this story and to see it. So we want to take it to them, yes, in the form of a book, but the difference of what the book will be all the factual information that people want. But a lot of people learn better through something more imaginative.
Right.
So there'll be a lot of imaginative dialogue where you can explore different issues, particularly about the role of the women in his life. So one of the huge criticisms that I'm very aware of is the role of women in Islam.
Right.
And, although I know an awful lot more about it than I did 20-odd years ago,
sure,
and I'm really aware that there's such perceptions and negativity and ignorance about it. So I wanted to have some creative dialogue in the imaginative side of the book to explore these things and what it must have been right in the Victorian age for women, and for what it was like if your husband suddenly becomes one of these Muslims. These days that's an incredibly unusual thing to happen. Then it would have been unbelievably unusual to happen. So as well as having that imaginative dialogue, ultimately it's going out to communities and talking to them, as I'm doing with you now, and encouraging people to give me their experiences. That's the bit I really, really want people to do, is to get in touch. And if they've had somebody in their life who's reverted, or if they've reverted themselves, or the family issues, those are the things that I want to be included, because I want this book to be about the way human beings think,
right?
And and the experiences that we have collectively, and I think bringing it back to the human element of the story, that's the bit that draws people in, who normally, if you said to them, well, let's all go along to a community centre and meet some Muslims, and they'll all start saying, well, I'm not sure about that, and you're going to make us feel bad, and we won't be able to say what we think. But actually, if you get somebody together and you talk about an amazing story and different themes, you look at it from a thematic point of view, and it just gets everybody chatting with each other and opening up.
Absolutely.
Rather than, it gives people permission to be more honest with each other.
Yeah.
And to feel less defensive, really. And I think that whole sort of them and us thing, it's got to stop. And I think there's, projects like this that hopefully we can focus on what makes us human, and, what makes somebody feel so much more closer to Islam than to another religion.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, so from what you eloquently have just said in your answer, it seems like the plan is to make the book not just informative and accessible, but entertaining as well, right? This will be a good read in terms of the details of the story. But my question is, what can people do to help make this a success? Now, there is a fundraising campaign going on at the moment, isn't there? I think on Launch Good, for this. And I've seen the video that Connor did. So Connor's been on the show before. We were talking about Frasier, actually, and I've seen that amazing film. I'm sure you have as well.
It's fantastic.
It is fantastic. So, the 6-minute video that Connor did sets the scene beautifully. But what can people do to help make this a success? You've talked about them to get in touch to tell their stories regarding reverts, etc. But in terms of the campaign, let our listeners know what they can do to kind of help.
Yeah, we have the campaign ends on Sunday, so we really would love people, especially at this time of year, just to consider donating. To make sure that it happens and we can get it out there as soon as we can to as many different communities as we can, because obviously it's something that we're being asked to do across the country, and that's a big ask to do, but we're really committed to doing it.
Sure.
So if people can donate, it's on Launch Good. And if you just look up Launch Good, it's a Muslim crowdfunder, so that's why we decided on this one. There are lots of crowdfunders out there, but it was really important to me in particular to make sure, that there was a whole Muslim aspect of it.
Indeed. And
to focus on that. So that's where it is. It's on Launch Good, and you can just look Robert Reschid Stanley.
Yes.
Or Victorian Secret Muslim. And there's lots of lovely pictures of our family there at the Liverpool Mosque.
Indeed, I've seen it.
Yeah, they're great, aren't they?
They are fantastic. Yeah, one of you and your daughter as well, I believe, on that page.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, it's been great for for us as a family we're a close family anyway. We've always celebrated Eid and Christmas, and we always had the halal turkey for many, many years. So
that's beautiful.
To come together in the mosque is just fantastic.
No, it's amazing. I've got time just to ask you one quick question. Briefly, I read that one of the family's objectives for the book is to encourage more Muslims to consider the arts as a career. I found that fascinating, and it's something I've encouraged my daughter to pursue as well. But why is that important to you as a family? Briefly, if you wouldn't mind.
That's important to me because I've seen a lot of young people under an awful lot of pressure to do qualifications that they might not necessarily be A, ready for,
right,
and B, talented at, and C, you know, that might be not where their heart is. And Connor's been a fantastic inspiration to my daughter as well, because she wants to go into radio.
Oh wow, fantastic.
And he sort of said to her, you know, he's given her great advice about going into the arts as well. So I really think if it's something somebody wants to do, they should absolutely go for it. And the family should try and, you know, be sensible, have a great, you know, job plan out there, but please, you know, the world of the world of the arts world is just so starved of Muslims going into it. And
sadly,
and, you know, there's such talent out there.
There really is, you know. You're absolutely right, Christina. There's so much talent, and, you know, we see it in the different pockets of our communities where we live, but it kind of stays there. It doesn't go beyond there, rarely anyway. And I think we need to encourage that as parents, as community members. We need to encourage our, not necessarily just our youth, but people who have certain skills in the arts to pursue that. Christina, listen, it's been absolutely fascinating and an absolute pleasure to talk to you. Thank you so much for coming on and making it happen that you could come on. I really do appreciate that.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
And we of course wish you all the best with this. And if your daughter would like any sort of involvement in radio, you know, tell her to get in touch with me, and we can hopefully make something happen for her as well.
Oh, bless you. I will do. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Take care. Have a great weekend.
Take care. Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye. That was Christina Longden. A fascinating story. I hope you enjoyed that. It was a little bit different for Friday Night Prime. We were going way back in time, like, you know, 120 odd years or 100 years back, and it was fascinating. Listen, have a blessed Ramadan, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'll be back with you after Ramadan, June 22nd. Assalamu alaikum, and take care. You're listening to Salam